Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I'm Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers. And Jack, on Wednesday, the Diamondbacks got the best starting pitching performance of the season as Brandon Pfaadt delivered 9 innings of scoreless baseball. He allowed 1 hit, 1 walk. He faced 1 batter over the minimum. And yet the Diamondbacks lost their finale against the Giants. Jack, a tough pill to swallow in the finale of this series.
It was gut-wrenching. It was so sad to see Brandon Pfaadt not get the win there, not get the complete game shutout. It was especially distressing to see how it went down in the late innings and the failure to score. But boy, was Brandon Pfaadt good. I don't think I've seen him that good really ever. I mean, he had a game or two where he went 7 innings and struck out 12, but this was the best I've seen him look in all facets of his game.
We've talked a lot about how Brandon Pfaadt has this weird home road splits thing going. And this outing only just confirmed that all the more, Jack. I know you're talking about the numbers and how these things tend to flip season to season. But yeah, his last outing at Minnesota, 4 2/3 innings, 5 runs on 9 hits. This outing, 9 innings of scoreless baseball at home. You sticking to your theory there that the home road thing doesn't, there's really nothing there at the end of the day?
Well, I didn't say there's nothing there. I just said that it's impossible to identify anything specific and whether or not it's predictive going forward. Torey was asked about this, and he said, "We have no clue. We have no idea why this happens." Um, for the major leagues, the starting pitcher ERA at home is 4.01, and on the road is 4.46. So you're close to half a run difference is normal, which is a little bit bigger gap than you might even think it would be.
Yeah.
But obviously, what Brandon Pfaadt's doing this year is in a completely different stratosphere. I don't have a good explanation for it. I don't think that there's any one thing that we can nail down because we don't know. Maybe he likes sleeping at home. Maybe he's just more comfortable here. Maybe it's the mound. There could be a dozen different things, but he doesn't know, and Torey doesn't know, and the pitching coaches don't know. And he said, "Hey, if we could figure it out, would have fixed it by now."
Yeah, that's fair. Brandon Pfaadt, whatever's going on there, Jack. He was outstanding in this game. Everything the Diamondbacks could have hoped for in a game that was, of course, very, very important for them. I mentioned it earlier, just 1 hit allowed, 1 walk. There was an error late in the game made by Ketel Marte, but he erased 2 out of those 3 base runners with double plays, which was really impressive. He was super efficient, as you'd expect in a game where you go 9 innings, only 97 pitches. Heck, you could argue, Jack, he should have gone out there for the 10th inning, given the way that he was throwing the ball in this game.
I've never been in a ballpark for a no hitter, and I had such a tremendous nervous energy when he went into the 6th inning because I was thinking, if he has some efficient innings, this may not be an automatic pull situation, no hitter or not. And so I was really have my fingers crossed. And of course, as soon as I had that thought, was at the same time that Steve Berthume on the broadcast said, the Diamondbacks haven't allowed a hit in 11 and a half innings, including Brandon Pfaadt's first 5 innings tonight. Boom! This is like it's a given every time.
Those are the rules. That's the way these things work. But yeah, that was a wild stat. I mean, the Giants did not have a hit from the 4th inning on. In the Tuesday game, Eduardo Rodriguez was able to settle down. The bullpen was outstanding in that game. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then, yeah, with what Brandon Pfaadt did today, the D-backs wind up with 11 no-hit innings from the 4th inning of the Tuesday game to the 5th inning of the Wednesday game. Just unreal stuff there, Jack, from the pitching staff. Unfortunately, they only won 1 out of those 2 games. So in retrospect, maybe it doesn't feel all that significant.
Yeah. Oh, well, a couple other small notes. Zac Gallen had a complete game shutout September 8th of 23 against the Cubs. Had this stood up as a complete game shutout, which it doesn't count as a complete game because the game went extra innings, then it would have been the first complete game shutout by a Diamondback since that time. And also, our friends over at AZ Snake Pit pointed out that the last time Diamondback pitcher threw 9 shutout innings and got a no decision was Edwin Jackson back in 2010.
And that was the no-hitter, right?
I don't think it was the no hitter. I could be wrong.
I
Did
want
it?
to I
Would,
want to say it
he won
was.
the no hitter. I think he won the no hitter. I don't think it was the no hitter.
Okay, maybe. I mean, did Edwin Jackson have 2 games where he threw 9 shutout innings in 2010? If so, that's totally wild. We'll have to look back at that later. But yeah, the story in this game, Jack, unfortunately, as much as it should have been Brandon Pfaadt, it kind of wasn't at the end of the day because the Diamondbacks were not able to score any runs in this game, at least until the 11th inning when they were down 5 at that point. The offense certainly had their opportunities in this one, Jack. The bottom of the 9th and the bottom of the 10th very much stand out. D-backs had they got a 1-out triple from Corbin Carroll in the bottom of the 9th, and it was like, all right, here we go. All you need to do is get Carroll home from third base. You've got a couple of outs to work with. D-backs weren't able to do that. Gabriel Moreno was intentionally walked. Blaze Alexander was hit by a pitch that loaded the bases with 1 out. And then the Diamondbacks made the decision to have Adrian Del Castillo pinch hit for James McCann, one of the more controversial decisions that Torey Lovullo made in this series. Del Castillo winds up striking out, and then Alec Thomas hit a slow roller ground out to end the inning. I know you asked Torey about that decision after the game, Jack, the decision to go to Adrian Del Castillo over, I guess, maybe sticking with James McCann, who's certainly hit well lately, or maybe going to Ildemar Vargas off the bench instead of Del Castillo.
My thought as soon as I saw Del Castillo walk out was he's too strikeout prone for this situation. I felt that really number one priority should have been contact. And if you wanted to pinch hit for McCann, which is debatable whether they should have or not, there's plenty of evidence to say, hey, that was a tough right-on right matchup for McCann. He might not have been able to get the bat on the ball, or he wasn't having a great day either. But he's also had a pretty darn good month. So who knows if he wouldn't have come through in that spot. But if you are going to pinch hit in that situation, for my money, I wanted a guy that was much higher contact probability, whether it be on the ground or in the air. That was not the decision that Torey Lovullo went with. I asked him about it post game. Did he think about maybe going to Vargas? Did he regret not going to him? And he said, it's going to keep me up at night, but I was looking for a fly ball. Adrian Del Castillo is a fly ball hitter. So that's what he was going for. But just my gut instinct, the way, the pitcher was throwing the ball, I just knew that he was going to, just felt in my gut, like this guy's going to give Del Castillo a tough time. Sure enough, he struck out. But this isn't results bias creeping in, because I turned around to Alex D'Agostino and said, as Del Castillo emerged from the dugout, no good. This guy strikes out too much. I don't want him in this situation. So that was my feeling at the time before he even got to home plate. I didn't really put a lot of thought at the moment whether or not he should even be pinch hitting for McCann or not. I was just more focused at that point, since you made that decision, why not Vargas?
Yeah, I think it's a totally fair question. I know a lot of people on baseball Twitter, on D-backs Twitter, were not super happy about this decision. The point you're making is valid, Jack. Adrian Del Castillo has a 37.9% strikeout rate this year after striking out in that spot, and that's really high. I mean, frankly, there are not a whole lot of teams around the league right now that in a pivotal moment in a game are bringing somebody off the bench who has a close to 40% strikeout rate. That's not a normal thing that happens. Obviously, the D-backs roster is in kind of an interesting spot right now. And Del Castillo did hit a big home run in the Tuesday game. So I don't want to forget that he came through with one of the biggest hits in the game the night before. I think arguably the biggest hit in that Tuesday game was Adrian Del Castillo's home run that got the D-backs back in it. I mean, they were down 4-0, then it was 4-1. He made it 4-3. That was really, really big for them. But yeah, in a spot like that, you don't necessarily need a home run. You're looking more than anything for contact, ideally. And Del Castillo does hit a decent number of fly balls, so I can understand it from that perspective. But the swing and miss is not ideal in that situation.
Yeah. I do want to just be fair and read what Torey said. I mean, let's hear from the manager. When I asked him, whether or not he considered using Vargas, he said yes and no. I like both guys. Del Castillo is swinging a good bat right now. He had a big home run Tuesday. I was looking to get the ball elevated. That's it. He had some good swings, some really good swings. The bottom line is he missed. He missed on a couple of key opportunities. Of course, I'll think about that all night. So that's what the manager had to say about that particular decision. It's up to the listener and readers over at our website, because there's an article that has that discussion of that controversial decision, to decide how they feel about it. I'm not going to try to tell anybody what they should or shouldn't feel. I gave my opinion. I second guessed him, and I did it in the middle of a press conference like I always do. I just want our listeners to know, as much as I push back on some stuff, there's nobody in that press room that questions Tory's decisions after the fact more than me. Now, I'm not the only one that ever does it, but I push it about as hard. I push the envelope on that pretty darn hard.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I've seen it with my own eyes over the past couple of years for sure. Where I ultimately land on that, Jack, is that I think Torrey's just in a tough spot. James McCann is not an ideal guy for that moment on paper. He certainly had a good month, as you said, but he has a career OPS of 646 against righties. Adrian Del Castillo, your strikeout rate point is very valid there. And then Ildemaro Vargas he's had some good moments for the Diamondbacks for sure, and he would be batting left-handed, which you certainly like there. But he hits a lot of ground balls. His ground ball rate is about 56%, I think I saw this year, and that's not great in a spot where you ideally want to get the ball elevated with the infield in. So I don't know if there were any great moves there for Torey Lovullo, but I can definitely understand the criticism of that one.
Yeah. I mean, if we look up current year stats, the sample sizes are all small. Like, I was looking at Vargas, and I think he was 16 for 52, a little over 300 batting average against left-handed pitching. And he doesn't strike out hardly at all. McCann is actually hitting for a little higher batting average and significantly higher OPS against righties than he is lefties, but he strikes out a lot more against righties. He's
Yeah.
got 266 average and a 799 OPS this year, but it's 64 at bats and 37 at bats versus a lefty. He's hitting 243 with a 727 OPS. He got a higher OBP but a lower slug. He's only hit one of his 5 homers against the lefty. So I mean, it's all small sample size stuff. If you're going to try to project that kind of stuff out in a matchup, which they do, I mean, they have a matchup grid. And Torey said the other day, he's got the matchup grids and the data, and he looks at that 50%, and then he looks at the his gut 50%. So he made his gut call, didn't work out.
The other decision that people were questioning with Torey Lovullo was not having the contact play on in the bottom of the 10th inning. Alek Thomas at second base as the ghost runner. Tim Tawa lays down a sac bunt, moves him to third. He's there with one out. And then Jake McCarthy hit a fairly slow roller, but not a super slow roller. It was about 90 miles an hour off the bat up the first baseline. Rafael Devers kind of bobbled it. In retrospect, I think there's a decent chance that if the contact play had been in place there, that Alek Thomas could have scored from third base. But I think you and I are on the same page here, Jack, that feels like a hindsight is 2020 sort of criticism. If I don't think you can assume that Rafael Devers beforehand, before the play happens, I don't think you can assume that Rafael Devers is going to be unable to make a play on a pretty routine ground ball and just throw home. If Alek Thomas gets thrown out there by a mile, I mean, I can't imagine what people on D-backs Twitter would be saying at that point. I think that would be the much bigger mistake in that moment.
It's hard to say. I mean, the information that you shared with me, one poster was saying, "Hey, Jake McCarthy hits in a lot of ground balls. He's probably got a better than 50% chance if he puts the ball in play that it's going to be on the ground." So there's that. But it is a little bit of results bias, because the odds are, that um, it was the ball would have normally been caught. by Devers or whichever infielder. The flip side of that is the Giants' defense. The night before, they really struggled, and the Giants' defense was a lot better today. It was a lot crisper. A lot of it was coming in center field.
Yeah.
Boy, that was annoying. But the Giants' defense struggled on Tuesday night, and they definitely tightened it up today and played much, much better. So yeah, it's hard to say on that one. I'm open to the idea, but like you said, had they gone contact play, I mean, so many times they go on the contact play and the guy's out at home by 14 feet and everyone's pissed off. So it happens all the time.
The
Seems like.
Diamondbacks finished the game 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position. A lot of that happened in the 9th, 10th, and 11th innings when they just weren't able to push anything across other than the one run on a Corbin Carroll sac fly in the 11th inning. As far as the pitching goes, after Brandon Pfaadt, Jack, we should give a quick shout out to Brandon Garcia, who put up a 0 in the 10th inning. That was really impressive. I continue to like what I'm seeing from him from a stuff standpoint, even though the numbers aren't great. You saw him, it was a line drive from Rafael Devers. I don't think it was hit very hard, but it allowed Grant McCray to advance from second to third as the ghost runner. And then Willy Adames struck out and Matt Chapman struck out to finish that inning. So impressive stuff there from Brandon Garcia. But unfortunately, Jack, then came the 11th inning. D-backs go to John Curtis looking for potentially another 0. I guess that in worst case, you give up one run. Maybe you got a chance to score 2 in the bottom half, but he was not able to do that, Jack. It was an ugly day for John Curtis. There was a pass ball from Gabriel Moreno. Then he walked the first batter that he faced in Bryce Eldridge. Gerard Encarnacion hit an RBI single. Patrick Bailey hit a single. Christian Koss hit a 2-run double. And then at that point, Torey removed Curtis from the game, went to Juan Murillo. By the end of the inning, the Giants were up 5-0, and it kind of felt like the game was over at that point.
Yeah, one other criticism I had seen was why not give Garcia an up down there and let him come out to face the first batter of the inning, which in that case would have been Bryce Eldridge, the lefty. But maybe Bob Melvin goes to his bench there and goes to a right-hand hitter, but I don't think it would have mattered. There is a case to be made for going back to Garcia for up down, but we don't know. And I didn't ask Torey about that, but we don't know how he was feeling and whether or not he was like eligible lengthwise for an up down. But he was pitching so well, it's reasonable to think like maybe he'd have come out and face the first lefty, get the first out, then bring in Curtis. That might have been a better way to go there. Instead, Curtis walked Eldridge, and it all went downhill from there.
That is a fair point. I mean, I don't think it's super obvious or anything. Would it have changed the outcome of the game? Probably not, because even if you leave in Brandon Curtis, then you're probably or Brandon Garcia, then you're probably going to John Curtis shortly thereafter. And it wasn't just one batter for John Curtis that was an issue today. It was just a rough day all the way around for him. It's tough to really be too critical of Curtis, though, Jack, because he's been really everything you could have possibly hoped for the D-backs, given the way that they acquired him. I mean, he still has, I think, a sub-4 ERA, if I'm not mistaken. At least it's right around that mark. Yeah, 3.97. And I mean, that's pretty darn good for someone that you just kind of picked up late in the season, needing a guy to fill a spot. So there's been a whole lot more good than there's been bad for John Curtis this year.
Yeah. Well, it was a tough day on offense, and unfortunately, Ketel Marte looked like he was getting on track Tuesday, but he went 0 for 5 today. Just another rough day at the plate. Just seemingly can't get going and can't drive the ball. He's not hitting really, it's been a very long time now since he's really showed his power. And that was rough. It was great to see Carroll hit his 17th triple. That was exciting. You thought when he hit the ball into the corner and you saw the ball rattling around, you thought the game was over, basically. You thought there's no way he doesn't end up scoring. So tough pill to swallow for fans. The one thing I want to say is, and we'll get there, but they're not going to win every game. This team just isn't set up to go on that kind of a run. It's too inconsistent. But they probably should have lost on Tuesday. And they probably won this game. So, I mean, either way, you're probably still looking at winning 2 out of 3. but they probably should not have won on Tuesday night. The Giants really coughed that game up. I mean, the Diamondbacks bullpen threw 4 perfect innings on Tuesday, and the Giants defense, as I mentioned earlier, was really terrible. So that was a choke job by the Giants, and Bob Melvin, from what I heard, was extremely upset about losing the game basically on 3 infield singles, and had a lot of you know not suitable for work type of language, from what I heard, over that situation. He was quite upset. So look, it goes both ways, right? Giants kind of choked the game away on Tuesday. D-backs choked the game away on Wednesday.
Well, of course, the big question is, where do the Diamondbacks stand in the NL wild card? The answer is they're still in this thing. That's the short version, but we're going to give the slightly extended version of that, talk a little bit more about all the different scenarios that could play out. We'll do that on the other side of this break.
Hey, if you're a card collector or you're looking to collect, buy, sell, trade, Arena Club's the spot. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the old process, AJ, was very clunky. Buy a box, rip the pack, tons of commons, send it in for grading. And then finally, you get everything back. This is weeks and weeks, and you can start to try and sell the card. We have eliminated that with Arena Club, or they have. I act like I'm part of it. But in really one step.
Arena's your one-stop shop for everything. You get a card, you open a slab pack, the card is there, it's graded, it spins around coolly, shows you 3D, the front, the back, you can look at the corners, you can look at everything, and then you get a decision. Do I want to keep it? Do I want to sell it? Do I want to trade it? It gives you an instant offer. You can buy it back and re-rip another slab pack and try for something else, or you can keep it and hope the value goes up and sell it at a later date. It is truly the best spot to get cards.
20% off your first slab pack or card purchase can be had right now at arenaclub.com/FOUL and use code FOUL.
Well, Jack, we mentioned it earlier. The D-backs aren't out of this thing yet. We purposefully waited to record this until we knew the outcome of the Wednesday Padres-Mets game, and the Mets went on to lose that game, which does have, of course, significant implications for the Diamondbacks. Here's where things stand as of the end of play on Wednesday. I guess maybe there's other teams here that haven't finished, but at least in terms of the Padres and the Mets and the Diamondbacks and the Giants, all of those games are done. The Reds as well also played their game today. Here's where we stand. The Diamondbacks are still a game and a half out behind the New York Mets for that third wild card spot. The Reds and the Giants, of course, the Giants won because they beat the Diamondbacks, and the Reds also won today, Jack. So while the D-backs stay 1.5 games behind the Mets, which feels pretty doable to make up that ground here over the next week and a half, you also have the Reds now just a half game behind you, and the Reds do have the tiebreaker over the Diamondbacks, even though they've now secured that tiebreaker against the Giants.
That was an ill-gotten gain thanks to that ridiculous game that should not have been played in the rain. I'm going to rant about that one more time. That was a total rip-off job. Thank you, MLB.
There we go. Enough said. We'll just end the show right there. Yeah. So a game and a half, Jack, is doable. The Diamondbacks can make up a game and a half in the next 9 or 10 days. I think that is possible. Is it likely? Not particularly, but it is absolutely possible. And you made this helpful little graphic where we can sort of look at different scenarios for the Mets and then how the Diamondbacks would have to perform based on those scenarios. So for those of you joining us on the audio only side, I'll read some of these off. If the Mets go 7-3 in their final 10 games,
give the current records first.
Oh, yeah, that's a good call. So the Mets are 78-74 after losing their Wednesday game to the Padres. The Diamondbacks are 77-76. And I guess I should also say on the front end, if the Mets win 8 games, if they go 8-2, then I guess the Diamondbacks, the only scenario where the D-backs could beat that is if they go 9-0. Doesn't feel super likely, but I guess theoretically that's That's possible. If the Mets go 9-1 or 10-0, then there's no way for the Diamondbacks to catch them. But with those unlikely scenarios out of the way, if the D-backs go 7-3, or if the Mets go 7-3, then the D-backs could catch them by going 8-1. If the Mets go 6-4, the D-backs could catch them by going 7-2. And then getting more into kind of a reasonable range here, if the Mets go 5-5, then the D-backs would be in. At least they would beat the Mets if they were able to go 6-3, Jack.
Right. And that's where you get into, I'm sorry, can you go back to the table one more time, please?
Yeah.
That 5-5, I mean, it's pretty easy right now, the way the Mets are playing, to imagine them going 5-5 or 4-6, even though they have the Marlins and the Nationals on the schedule. They also have to play the Cubs. And if the Mets go 5-5 and the D-backs go 6-3, or even if the Mets go 4-6 and the D-backs go 5-4, all of a sudden that seems pretty manageable. Now, if the D-backs only go 5-4, then you got to worry about, well, they're only a half game in front of both the Giants and the Reds, and if the Reds were to catch them and tie them, then they have the tiebreaker. They would be in over the Diamondbacks. But for right now, those two teams are still a half game behind. So we'll update this before our next show and see where all the dust has settled. And I'll probably include those other teams as well. So, it's not that hard to imagine the Mets going 4-6. It really isn't.
Yeah.
I did this same chart back on August 31st. And since that time, do you have that one handy by the way?
Yeah. This is a throwback.
So on August 31st, the Mets were 74-64, 10 games over 500, and now they're 78-74. They've gone 4-10.
Crazy.
Right? And the D-backs have gone 9-5 in that time. So, the Mets went 4-10 and the D-backs went 9-5. That's a pretty big gap. All of a sudden, that prior table doesn't look quite so daunting. It would be a lot more comfortable if the Reds and the Giants were a game or two further behind. If you can go back to our original table through today, now, if you look at that top Diamondbacks, I mean, boy, look at how that would look at 78-75. They'd only be a half game back of the Mets in the loss column.
Yeah.
That would be it. So, I mean, today's gut punch, I mean, I don't want to understate just how devastating that was. But our good friend John Gambadoro over at Arizona Sports, I was listening to him on the drive home, and he was pointing out that the Mets were going to play 3 more games. We're going to have 3 more Mets results before the Diamondbacks play again. We got the first one just now a little while ago. They're going to play tomorrow morning, and the Mets game will be just about wrapping up, if not already wrapped up, right around when the D-backs game starts. Probably, within 20, 30 minutes of it starting, the Mets should be finished on Friday. So Gambo, in his inimitable way, said, hey, if the Mets lose all 3 of those, they'll be tied with the Diamondbacks in the loss column. So that was a pretty interesting way to look at it.
Well, 1 down, 2 to go, right? The Mets lost the first of those 3 games, so we'll see what the next couple look like. As much, Jack, as people might want to envision a scenario where the D-backs could go 9-0 the rest of the way, or 8-1, or even 7-2, I mean, the reality is they're playing 3 pretty tough teams here to finish things out. They've got the Phillies, and then they've got the Dodgers, both of those series at home, and then they finish with the San Diego Padres out in San Diego. On paper, it's the hardest schedule that any team has the rest of the way. I do think there are some silver linings for them. One being that you're at least not getting both Chris Sanchez and Ranger Suarez this weekend against the Phillies. The D-backs will just get Ranger Suarez. We'll talk more about that series a little bit later in the show. Trey Turner is also hurt right now, for what that's worth. And then next week, you figure the Dodgers and Padres might not have a whole lot to play for, but there might have something to play for. I mean, as of the time of us recording this, there's only I guess it's a 2.5 or 1.5 game difference between those teams right now. The Padres are 1.5 game behind the Dodgers in the NL West. And neither of those teams is going to get a first round bye. I don't think there's any way that either of them overtake the Cubs or the Brewers and win the division and get one of those top 2 seeds. But it still is significant because if you win your division, you're getting home field advantage in that toss-up 3-game wild card round. You'd much rather play those 3 games at home than you would on the road. So I don't know exactly how aggressive the Dodgers and Padres will be on that front next week, especially the Padres when the season is really winding down. Are they going to want to just set their rotation for the postseason at that point? But it's possible that both of those teams have something to play for right up until the final day of the season.
On the other hand, last year, I think after the first game of the series, Padres didn't have anything to play for, and D-backs still lost the second game.
Yeah. Don't underestimate the Padres when they have nothing to play for. I think that's absolutely a point that has to be made. So, yeah, there are some silver linings here for the Diamondbacks, but what can you expect over these 9 games? The Diamondbacks we were looking at it before we hopped on the air. The D-backs have had some issues completing sweeps this season. It's not something they've done very much. Obviously, today was an example of that, being unable to complete the sweep against the Giants. They have a total of 5 sweeps all season. So it's basically once a month the Diamondbacks this year have been able to pull off a sweep. Their last one was more than a month ago. Even though they've been playing pretty well in that stretch, their last sweep was more than a month ago. It was the Rockies, August 8th to 10th. It just isn't really something the D-backs have been able to do. And if you're unable to sweep any of these teams, Jack, the best you can do is win 2 out of 3. And of course, if you did that against all 3 of the teams, if you took 2 out of 3 in all 3 of these series, then you're looking at a 6-3 record. And as we were showing before, if the D-backs can manage to go 6-3, which I think would be a really, really great outcome on their end, then you need the Mets to go 5-5 or worse in order to beat them. And it's possible, as you were saying earlier. Could the Mets in their current state go 5-5 or even 4-6 the rest of the way? I think it's totally possible, but I wouldn't be dreaming on the D-backs going 8-1 the rest of the season. I don't think that's all that realistic.
Yeah, look, the likely situation is best case is they go 5-4, and they just got to really hope the Mets totally falter, and the Reds and the Giants don't do much. That's it. I mean, this schedule is still remarkably tough. They're still going to see plenty of good pitching, and their bats have been a lot quieter or inconsistent. Like they'll have 8 runs and then a day like today. It's been very hit or miss with the Diamondbacks offense. So, look, I don't want to be too negative. I don't want to be too positive. We shouldn't be too high on it. Today's loss really hurt. I mean, there's just no sugarcoating that. But every loss would hurt, and you can't expect them to go undefeated either. I mean, they've been in this boat for a very long time. I have said all along, and I'll say it again, I'll believe this team when they can go on a 6-game winning streak. Well, this would have been their best opportunity to actually get moving in that direction. I think if they'd have won today, that would have been their 5th straight, right? They had won 4.
Yeah.
So they had their shot to get to a 6-game winning streak. Now that almost seems impossible. It's, facing the Phillies and Dodgers, I don't know how you get on a 6-game winning streak at this point.
Yeah, probably impossible to do that. The other thing that I'll add real quick for those of you thinking about the tiebreaker with the Mets, especially after what happened last year, that whole tiebreaker situation, it is at this point mathematically impossible for the Diamondbacks to miss the playoffs by losing a tiebreaker to the Mets because their head-to-head records are the same. So we would go to the second tiebreaker in the standings, which for baseball is intra-division record. And the Diamondbacks have a 2-game advantage in that regard this season. It's possible that the Mets, by the end of the season, do have that tiebreaker advantage, but it isn't possible for the D-backs to catch the Mets and actually be tied with them while also losing that tiebreaker advantage in the process. So if you're having PTSD from last year about missing missing the playoffs due to tiebreaker. It could still happen with the Reds. The Reds do have the tiebreaker over the D-backs. That could still be a problem, but there's no scenario where the D-backs catch the Mets, but that they wind up losing the tiebreaker to them.
Is it still raining in Cincinnati?
Maybe. I don't know. Why do you ask?
I'm just so pissed about that series.
I feel like
let it go.
It's always raining in Cincinnati, right, Jack? That's what happens in the Midwest. Someone who's never lived in the Midwest, just like always raining over there. It's my outside perception. But yeah, so those are kind of all of the different scenarios, the things to be thinking about the rest of the way. I think because although this was a really significant loss for the D-backs, the fact that the Mets lost is also very significant. Today would be, if we're talking about the D-backs being 2.5 games out right now, Jack, I mean, then you're kind of back in true miracle territory. And still the odds are not high, but I don't know. Fangraphs, where does Fangraphs have the D-backs right now? Maybe around 6-7%. Something in that range. Let's see what we got. Fangraphs says 7.2%. So it dropped a few percentage points from yesterday, which makes sense. You've got one fewer day on the calendar to make up this ground. The Reds winning is also significant for sure, but we'll see where this goes in the coming days. To finish things out here, Jack, well, we will get to our preview of the Phillies series here shortly, but we did want to talk about this Phillies or this Giant series in retrospect. Just if I can find the right slide, there it is. Zac Gallen on Monday, Jack, pitched really well, and it's worth mentioning that happened since our last episode. 6 innings of 1-run ball, 6 strikeouts. I know the D-backs broke through later in the game with a big 6-run inning. They didn't necessarily need Gallen to be this good when all was said and done, but he's been really, really solid for the Diamondbacks lately, and a huge reason that they're in this position at all to even have a shot at this thing.
Yeah, this was really one of his better outings. Obviously, it wasn't his best outing of the year, but it was super smooth. That's the way I'll put it. I think it was a really smooth outing for him. That's the best way I can describe it.
His changeup has been a really big weapon for him lately. He's made a number of Giants hitters look silly with that pitch, including Rafael Devers, who sort of looked like he'd never seen a changeup before on some of those swings. Big step in the right direction for Gallen after a not so great start against this Giants team last week. Elsewhere, Jack, Geraldo Perdomo had a pretty good series overall. It wasn't great on Wednesday, but he reached base 5 times in the Monday game, finished the series 5 for 11 with 2 doubles and a triple. Corbin Carroll had a pretty good series as well, 5 for 12 with a double, that triple that we mentioned earlier as well. He also walked on base 6 times altogether. And then Jordan Lawlar, Jack, it was not exactly the hit that he envisioned maybe for his first career walk-off, but nonetheless, it was a walk-off single and an enormous moment for the Diamondbacks. As you said, you could really make an argument that they shouldn't have won that Tuesday game, and they found a way. They found a way to pull it off there in the bottom of the 9th.
Yeah. One thing I do want to say, because I complain, of course, that Torey's ledger doesn't get entries onto the positive side very often. He made a couple of pretty good moves in that game as well. Number one, he started Adrian Del Castillo, who had a 2-run homer early in the game, to get the D-backs on the board and get back in the game after Eduardo Rodriguez had given up that 4 spot in the first inning. So there was a lot of just upsetness about the fact that on the part of some that Del Castillo was in a lineup and Jordan wasn't. But then once they switched and brought in a lefty, Lawlar came in and he pinch hit for Del Castillo, and he didn't end up scoring, but he had a really good at bat and drew a walk.
Yeah.
And I think the pitch he saw there gave him some confidence. And yeah, it was almost a check swing, but bottom line is he put the ball in play, and it was enough to get the job done, right? It wasn't a strikeout, which is what you're looking for in that situation. Put the ball in play. So, it was great for him. We had a nice talk with him after the game. It was fun to see him happy. He's a nice guy. I mean, he's a, stand-up person. He's very forthright. When you talk to him, he's such an impressive individual. And, hopefully the results on the field will match the type of human being that he is. Because if you were able to match the performance on the field with how good a person he is, you'd have an all-star every year. So, he's still somebody we should be really supporting and rooting for his success. He has been hitting the ball better, but he's going to have to find a defensive position at some point.
Jordan Lawlar in the month of September, 9 for 29, Jack, hitting 310, 344, 517. Things have really turned around for him since he got that elusive first hit of the season back on September 2nd. Defensively, there were some issues the other day, but offensively, he's looked pretty good here for the past couple of weeks. We'll see what he looks like down the stretch here to finish off the season. We talked about it earlier. We also have a note here about Ketel Marte. He finished the series 2 for 14 with an RBI. As you mentioned earlier, he had one swing in that Tuesday game that looked a whole lot like Ketel Marte of old. It was a hustle double. I think it was 105 miles per hour off the bat. He also had a single in that game, an RBI single that I think was 89 miles an hour off the bat. That was a little bit less inspiring, but the double was encouraging, Jack. But then you see him come out today and go hitless, and we continue to just see a very inconsistent version of Ketel Marte that is not impacting the ball the way that we're used to seeing.
Torey said batting left-handed, he's having a tough time getting out over his front foot. That's still impacting him. So I'll be looking for the next time he faces a lefty and see if maybe he's doing a little bit better being able to drive the ball batting right-handed. That has, ironically, this year, he hasn't hit it with as much power right-handed as we're used to seeing. But, it's a tough nut. After the first game of the series, it was very odd. At the very end of the game, Bob Brenly said, yeah, it was a great win. I hate to be like a Debbie Downer, but Ketel Marte saw 7 pitches in 5 at-bats in the first game. And, he really was coming down pretty hard on Ketel about the quality of bats. And he drew the contrast. He said Geraldo Perdomo saw 7 pitches in 2 of his at-bats. Hit 2 7-pitch at-bats. So, I mean, it's not just that he's not driving the ball. It's not just that his foot's still sore, which I believe it is. And, he's playing through it, but he's just not driving the ball at all. As long as we're talking about injury, I think we should also mention Blaze. He re-aggravated that elbow today. He tried to steal a base and he kind of fell awkwardly after the slide and, banged the elbow on the ground. And it was barking at him pretty darn good for the rest of the game. And he was still pretty sore after. So good timing for an off day for him. But Blaze is going to be battling that elbow probably for the rest of the season.
Well, transitioning to our preview of this Philadelphia Phillies series, it is an awfully big one here, Jack, and the Phillies have been playing really good baseball lately. They have lost 1 series in the last month. And of course, we're talking about if the D-backs are going to go 6-3, they're probably going to need to win all 3 of these series, I guess, unless they can find a way to sweep somebody. The pitching matchups here, Ryan Nelson against Taijuan Walker on Friday, Zac Gallen and Aaron Nola on Saturday, Eduardo Rodriguez against Ranger Suarez on Sunday. We wondered if the D-backs might miss Ranger Suarez. They might see Walker Buehler in the series instead, but I guess the Phillies are skipping Walker Buehler. So they get Taijuan Walker, Aaron Nola, and Ranger Suarez over the weekend. Trey Turner, as I mentioned earlier, is out with injury. I don't expect that he will return over the weekend. So that is a good thing if you're the D-backs, Jack, but what's not a good thing is that basically every single Phillies hitter is on fire at the same time. I'm not quite sure how this is possible.
Yeah, I was playing around and just trying to see more or less the everyday players. So these are for the month of September, everybody that has 30 plate appearances or more. So basically they're everyday players. There's 8 of them. And the only one with a WRC plus under 148 is JT Realmuto, who will probably come into Chase Field and hit for the cycle again. But I mean, if you look at the averages on the screen, Brandon Marsh has a 378 batting average and a 216 WRC plus. Harrison Bader, on the strength of a 595 BABIP we looked at, is hitting 381 for the month and a 175 WRC plus. Bryson Stott, 356 with a 181 WRC plus. Bryce Harper's only hitting 246, but he's got 5 homers, so he's got a 148. That's the second lowest. Max Kepler's at 164 WRC plus. Kyle Schwarber, 226 batting average, but of course, bunch of walks, bunch of homers, so he's got a 152. Otto Kemp, who's been filling in and platooning in the infield, he's been playing some third base. He's got a 171 on the strength of a 323 batting average. The only one that's really not doing much at the plate is Realmuto. He's hitting 233 without any power. So, I mean, that's that's daunting. One other point on the Diamondbacks pitching we need to note is that Torey Lovullo announced today that the Diamondbacks are going with a 4-man rotation for the remainder of the season. Nabil Crismatt is being moved to the bullpen. So Torey said that he felt that, Crismatt could give them some length. Of course, they have the off day today. They have an off day Monday. This gives extra starts. Looks like Nelson will for sure get an extra start in there, as well as Zac. So that's why they're doing this, I think, is to get those two guys the extra start.
So I guess that would mean, just thinking ahead here, Jack, the Dodgers series, the D-backs would have Brandon Pfaadt, Ryan Nelson, and Zac Gallen. And then the Padres series would finish out with Rodriguez, Pfaadt, and Nelson. At least just kind of playing it out on paper. That's what the D-backs would have the rest of the way.
Right.
Yeah.
They lined it up. He's their best pitcher. I mean.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe, I'm sure they would love to not have him pitch the last day of the season and save him for the first game of a wild card round. But the odds of being able to clinch before the last day of the season, probably not very high. That would feel like a miracle at this point.
When Torey was asked actually about this, whether or not considering even the potentiality for then going to play a wild card series, that would be leading off with Zac Gallen. And Torey joked, he says, "Yeah, we're not as stupid as we look."
That's fair. Yeah, I guess you could, if Nelson pitched the last day of the season, then yeah, Zac Gallen would be lined up to start the first game of a potential playoff round. Eduardo Rodriguez would be lined up behind him, Jack. I'm not sure that's the direction the D-backs would want to go there, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I don't think we need to go too far down that road of figuring out what their playoff rotation is going to be like in the wild card round.
They're going to have to use him in the playoffs if they get there. I mean, this is it. I mean, these are their guys: Nelson, Gallen, Rodriguez, and Pfaadt. That's their 4. If they do get to the postseason, that's their 4 starters. Now, of course, in a wild card round, you only need 3. But who knows? Maybe Brandon Pfaadt starts a division series.
Who knows? We've seen some crazy things here not that long ago. So we'll certainly be along for the ride. We appreciate all of you being here with us on this episode. If you haven't already, be sure to leave us a comment here on this video. We always love to hear from you. Subscribe to the channel. Drop a like on this video. That helps us out a ton. If you're joining us over on an audio-only platform, we'd really appreciate it if you'd consider leaving us a 5-star review. That helps us a lot as well. You can find us on social media. I am at Jesse N. Friedman. Jack is at ShoeWizard59. And our show is at Snakes Territory. Jack, of course, does a great job covering the Diamondbacks over at Arizona Diamondbacks on SI. And Jack, I know you have an update on that front that you wanted to share with our viewers and listeners here.
Yes, I posted this on Twitter, but not everybody uses X or Twitter. So earlier in the year, I went to Minute Media, the people I'm contracted with to be the publisher of Diamondbacks on SI, and I told them that I'd like to step back a little bit and spend a little bit more time with family and find my way into a little bit better life-work balance. I'm a bit of a workaholic, and I don't have a governor on how much time and effort and intensity that I put into this. At the same time, Alex D'Agostino has been my deputy editor for a long time now, and he does a fantastic job. And so I went to Minute Media and I said, look, I'd like to turn over the website to Alex and let him take control as the publisher and managing editor. They agreed to do that, and that actually went into effect August 1. And so since that time, Alex has actually been the boss running Diamondbacks on SI. I'm continuing to write there. I'm continuing to cover the team. I'm just cutting back. So I'm not, instead of writing 75 to 100 articles and never missing a single home game, I'm going to about half the home games and doing about 25, 30 articles. So I'm not fully retiring. I'm continuing to do Snakes territory. I'm continuing to write. I'm continuing to support and help Alex. I hope that those of our listeners that enjoy our website on SI as well will continue to support it and support Alex. He does a fantastic job. He's a really good writer. He's really smart. He's been a sponge. He's soaked up so much baseball knowledge in a few short years working with us. And, we're going to continue to make sure that site hums.
Well, Jack, we're certainly not done with you around here, so we're glad that you're sticking around here on Snakes territory. The show will go on, so we're certainly excited to have you here. And I guess I can understand maybe wanting to have a life a little bit. Covering baseball as someone who did it full time there for a couple of years, it is very much an all-consuming endeavor. There's basically no limit to the number of hours that you can spend covering a baseball team. And Jack, I think you and I have been on the same page that we have a hard time controlling ourselves when it comes to the number of hours that we spend thinking about and writing about and talking about baseball. So certainly understand the decision there. And I think our listeners know this, but Jack has been doing tremendous work covering this team for a long time. He worked for this baseball team. For those of you who might not know, he worked in the front office as well at some point. So yes, you will be missed in any capacity where you leave the baseball world, Jack. But we are happy that you are sticking around here on Snakes territory for sure.
And I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving on SI. I'm just cutting back to half what I was doing.
Yeah, having a life. It can be a good thing, I suppose. Well, thank you once again to all of you for being with us. We really appreciate it, and we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.